Okay, this is my photo book entitled Grandpa, and over the course of the past 3 months or so I've been corresponding with my dad, who's in Chicago, and I'm going to school in Toronto, and been trying to find out more information about my grandfather, who was born in Canada. And since I'm studying in Canada, I thought it would be a interesting project to find out more about where my grandfather comes from. This is the cover. This is a replica of the cover of the package that my dad sent from the States to Canada, which contained much of the documents and photos, the original photos and documents of my grandfather and his family. As you can see, here's the back, which is a replica of the back of the envelope. This is the cover page. That's my grandfather in the Navy. He became a captain in the Navy. The foreword, which basically explains the book, in that my grandfather, there's sort of a shroud of mystery surrounding where he was from. He said he was from a certain town called Port Perry in Ontario, which I ended up going to twice when from Toronto. But it turned out he's born in Cornwall, Ontario, which is closer to the Quebec border, and I also went there once as well. Just also gives a little bit of history about my grandfather. And the layout is in the form of sort of find out more. It's a process piece. You find out more about the uncovering of the mystery of where my grandfather is from and kind of the story behind where he comes from through emails, excuse me, from my dad, and emails from me to my dad. On the right are, photos and documents. It's my grandfather's handwriting about his parents, Louis and Ida, where they were born, when they entered the States, when they became citizens, when they were married, and then when they moved to Canada and came back to the States from Canada. So the whole piece is sort of a detective process of, tracking down where they were at the time my grandfather was born, why they were in Canada, why they moved back to the States, where my grandfather, why did he end up where he ended up, and so forth. Birth records from Ancestry.ca. I did some research here. So, also have the 1911 Census of Canada record for Solomon. Turns out, because of the unfamiliarity with the language, his birth certificate says Solomon, but then his name was changed to Samuel. Again, this is the map when I went to Port Perry, and trying to uncover why was Port Perry. These are photos my grandfather took of Port Perry from October 1973. This is District of Vermont. Citizenship certificate for my great-grandfather Louis, who was born in Palestine, but it says here Turkey because Palestine was under the Turkish Empire at that point. And this is from 1906. Then I just asked my dad to, I remember I had some medals from my grandfather's military years, and my dad emailed me some of the pictures of the medals. He attached them in the email there. And this is the marriage certificate and marriage license for my great-grandparents Louis and Ida. They were married in Vermont in 1907. Photos of Ida and Louis. And some of them also have information on the back. I copied all the photos, front and back, so they all have, if they were dated, they'll have the date, or if they had some sort of glue, etc. You can see all that. This one is from July 1933. You can kind of see that in the lower right-hand corner. This is an image that my dad found in the basement while we were corresponding, and no one knows where it's from or when it's from, but this is my great-grandfather Louis, and my grandfather Sam, and his younger brother David. I believe that's David. This is a certification of registered to vote. My great-grandfather rather, Louis, in Glens Falls, New York, which is where they ended up after a period in Canada where my grandfather was born. This is the document that states what I had said earlier about changing the name from Solomon to Samuel. This is from 1942. This document here is 1935. So it basically goes in chronological order of the documents. Skipping also around, this is from 1930, and this is WBGF, which is a radio station in Glens Falls, New York. You see the map of New York here. Glens Falls, where my grandfather spent the majority of his life, is here, and New York City is down here. It's about 5 hours north of New York City. Then we move to his college years, 1935. This picture is from June 13th, 1935, Angola, Indiana. He went to school at a place called Tri-State College, studied engineering. Eventually established his own company called Adirondack Construction Company, and built his own house in, he had a house in Glens Falls and also built his own sort of dream summer home on Lake George in upstate New York. And here's the 1940 census that I got from Ancestry.ca, and also just a cruise ship record from the Port of New York to the Caribbean somewhere from January 1955. And underneath there is a picture of my grandfather Sam with my grandmother Millie. Just sort of, we're moving into the years where he's found his wife Mildred, and they've had their first kid now, my Uncle Les. This is on a Canadian Colonial Airways, which is a now defunct airline. And as you can see, some of these have the dates here. And my grandfather also reached the rank of captain in the Navy, so now we're sort of moving on to the military years. More military photos. These also all have captions on the back as well, or dates. These are all from 1944. This is an article that I glued in here from the Glens Falls paper, commending my grandfather on his service in the Navy. Another article here from 1949 about an Italian boy he helped support. The Italian boy had lost his legs in World War II, and my grandfather, there was an adoption program where they would send money and look after the kid. It's my grandfather's uniform services card. And a program from 1971 where he was honored. This is a document of family members who had passed away in Europe. Still not quite sure what this document is about. Finally, a picture of Sam looking a bit more relaxed and casual. And then just finally some documents here. Taking it full circle, it's me with as a baby with my grandfather. So kind of a process piece of finding out more about where my grandfather comes from, and thus in the process finding out a lot more about my family, and also having a nice correspondence with my dad and getting to know a bit more about him as we both tried to uncover some family history. So there you have it, Grandpa from 2012.